Thank you. Yeah, what's happening in the world right now is just it's beyond sad. It's happening in this. It's the city that I grew up in is surrounded. Um, People are. I would never have thought that this could happen in modern times. I heard, my grandparents, my parents were almost like, toddlers, a little bit more than that, when the war started, when World War II started. I could never think that anybody would ever have to be evacuated from modern world that lived through World War II. I mean, that Europe lived through that.
Welcome to the Whole Student Podcast with Cal Balaban. Whole Student refers to the magical moment when a student is fully seen, heard, and known. This is the spark of a relationship between student and teacher, where the former is catalyzed on a journey beyond what they thought possible, and the latter is a proud advisor cheering from the sidelines. The Whole Student Podcast asks guests to reflect back to their moment, the person who became a transformative teacher in their lives and on the journey they were set upon. Our guest today is Kira Makagon. Kira Makagon is a successful serial entrepreneur and technology industry leader, a graduate of UC Berkeley, go Bears, in computer science and Haas Business School. She enjoys sharing the lessons she's learned from being the only woman in the room. Kira is a role model for young women, especially encouraging them to aim for leadership roles in the technology industry. She got her own start as the only child of Ukrainian Jewish immigrants who landed in San Francisco when she was a teenager. She is an avid writer and speaker, works with numerous entrepreneurs, and advisor to early stage companies, and serves on the board of Calix. Currently, she is the Chief of Innovation at RingCentral. Kira leads product, engineering, and operations employees spread across 4 continents. Before RingCentral, she co-founded several technology companies, has also participated in 2 successful IPOs, Scopus and RingCentral. Kira's honors and awards include 2015 and 2016 Most Influential Women in Business by the San Francisco Business Times, the 2016 Silver Stevie Award for Female Executive of the Year, 2018 Innovation Award for Team Collaboration by Aragon Research, 2018 San Francisco Business Times Forever Influential Honor Roll, 2019 Women World Awards Gold winner for Excellence in Industry, and 2020 Silver Stevie Award for the Most Innovative Woman of the Year Technology. Kira lives in Silicon Valley, enjoys skiing, snowboarding, and long walks with her husband in her free time. It is my great pleasure to introduce Kira to the Whole Student Podcast. Welcome, Kira.
Thank you, Cal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being our guest. And I hope that intro did justice. There was a lot there. I had to bring it down.
Yeah. Look, I'm honored and humbled. So it's often when I talk about myself, I say when you get the news, a lot of it is marketing. I'll let our organization, our marketing take the credit for a lot that they let me do out there and support me in that.
That's awesome. Well, Kira, I'm going to start you off with the first question. And the first question is, if you were to describe yourself as a student, what words would you use? And really take us back to you as a student so we can start to envision and picture who you were.
That was a long time ago. It's actually a question that I was never asked before. What was it like to be a student? I will tell you that as a student, I really wanted to excel. I was really determined to get all A's or to get as many A's as possible.
Right.
And that was really, especially in disciplines that I liked, which was math. And math really was sort of the top discipline, and then actually not science, but things like I enjoy things like philosophy, languages, business when in college. So my major, obviously, and that drive is probably was instilled in me by my parents, because if I brought home anything but an A, my mother and father would not be really happy. So
Got it.
I think a lot of it was actually plainly out of fear that I would be
Fair enough.
grounded if I didn't have all A's, or if I had,
Wow.
God forbid, a B in
Wow.
something. And in Ukraine, where I grew up, it's the same. It's AB. It's the same grading system, but it's just
Yeah.
5-4. It's just
Got
instead
it.
of an A, you get a 5.
So you had to bring home all fives.
All 5s. Exactly. I had to bring home all 5s, and
Wow.
it's it kind of trained me to be. I learned how to want to be really good at things that I studied, and how to make sure that I was well prepared. I think the best thing out of this drive for A's was that that it taught me how to be thorough, how to be well prepared. Because
makes
studying is in itself, just to get an A is sort of whatever, that's meaningless, I think, in many ways. But if you learn in that process how to learn and how to absorb information and how to make it useful and how to build upon that, which are the things you have to do to actually do really well, because it takes repetitive skills. It takes, like, you shouldn't be learning every time, because if you are, you won't be able to keep up,
Right.
regardless of where you are. So that and prioritize. And then the other thing that it taught me is how to prioritize, how to basically say no, because if I had to study for a test or write a paper, and going back to being even kind of in lower school, you have to prioritize, and that prioritization, that sacrifice that you consciously make, because you really won't have. It's not enough for your parents to push you, because you could be locked up in your room. Well, in my day, you couldn't really watch anything on an iPhone, but now you can. But you could read a book. I could do that. Couldn't play video games back then, but
That's right. That's right.
Or you do something, draw,
right.
or whatever is your fancy. If you're sitting in your room, that's where I grew up. That is if you had your own room. But really, it's about making those choices. And as a student, the way that I would describe myself is I was very much focused on making sure that I did the work. It doesn't mean I always got all A's. I made sure I did the work, and when I didn't get an A, I would go and try to figure out what is it that I didn't do, like what could I have done better, and all those skills really helped me down the road in my life. And then, kind of the third thing I would describe myself as a student would be, I tried to, like, there are different ways of learning how to excel and how to be a leader. And I not only wanted to get all A's, I really also wanted to lead, like I was the president of my class early on. But my style in leading wasn't that of leaving others behind. It was that of bringing them with me. So it wasn't really ever for me just about me getting an A and then my friend, getting a B. It was about collaboration, and sort of, in modern terms, I would say winning together. But I really tried to go out of my way to help my friends to do well, and I kind of expected them to do the same. And I think much of my formative years was people who kind of self-selected to behave that way. And schools weren't nearly as competitive as they are right now. So it was easier. But those are the things that I would describe myself as a student. And the final thing is, in addition to doing all this and having to prioritize, I really wanted to be an athlete. I really didn't want to be in academia as much. Like my best reward was the fact that I could go and ice skate in my free time. That's why the hard work for me was the payoff to go do some sports.
Got it. Wow. Well, thank you for that picture. I really can visualize it. Could you take us to the moment where you felt seen, heard, and known by that teacher in your life? Set the stage for us. Tell us who the teacher was, and take us to that moment. Really.
Yeah, that's also a great question. You're asking us some questions that I've never been asked before. So interestingly enough, in my lower school when I was still in Ukraine, and I did well in school, and I was the president of the class, etc. But I was Jewish, and being Jewish, there was clear discrimination, which is ultimately why my parents left Ukraine, Odessa, and decided to come to United States. And even though I'm blonde, my last name is not exactly Jewish. We weren't practicing Jews in any way. Russia was not, or Ukraine really, not Soviet Union at the time. In Ukraine, weren't really. There was no religious practices whatsoever. But still, the fact that you were Jewish by ethnicity was something that you had to deal with. Yeah, so the teacher was my physical education teacher, and it was in lower school, and I still remember. And the reason he was so formative for me in the way that he influenced me was not because I did really well in physical education, which I did because I loved it. It wasn't about the grade as pass fail. It was because I actually enjoyed physical exercise and activity, like running, jumping, whatever it is that we did. It was because he helped me deal with some of the things that I had to deal with by virtue of being Jewish and living in the Soviet Union and Ukraine at that time, where there was discrimination against Jews, even kids. And even though my last name is not really Jewish, my hair is blonde, but it was the fact that you were Jewish was actually, it was part of your list of students had their ethnicity next to them.
Wow.
So if you ended up having a teacher who was biased, then you had to deal with it. And I ended up having a teacher who was biased, and that was really difficult for me because I wasn't getting an award that I was supposed to get. There was other situations, and I was kind of getting really upset about that. And as a child, that could really make you behave in a way that conditions you to be to become either defensive or perpetually sort of have a chip on your shoulder. So he helped. He said, "Look, there are going to be other situations in life, or somebody's not going to like you. Okay, maybe when you go to work, your boss is not going to like you. You might have with that. You might have peers. You might have students who don't like you in older grades where it gets more competitive. There may be different situations where you will have to overcome adversity. And this was like way before I had to work in an industry, end up in an industry with all men, right?
Right.
At least when I started. And so what he said is, don't let it get to you. Ignore it. So, okay, you don't get this award. You'll get the next award. Maybe you won't get even the next award. You still stay who you are. And you keep the course. You stay focused. You keep the course. And you do whatever you can to achieve on the goals that you want to achieve on, which really helped. And I did. And I never let anything get to me. It doesn't mean that I don't get upset. I remember going home as a child crying about certain things in those situations. But you kind of bounce back, and you absolutely in life have to learn how to bounce back. Life is not a walk in the park. And that was, I'm so glad that I had a teacher like that.
Wow. What was his name?
That I don't remember. I think my mother remembers. I do not remember his name. Okay. I remember what he looks like, but I cannot remember his name.
Wow. And does he know what you're doing now and what you've done in the world?
No, he doesn't. And unfortunately, he passed away. So.
Oh. Wow. Okay. Well, this next question might feel somewhat bittersweet. Because if you could bring back that teacher and 4 others to a meal, 5 teachers in your life to a meal, and wave a magic wand and they're there in your home, Who would they be? I'm assuming he's one of them.
He's definitely one of them. He would be one. He would definitely be one of the five. There was a teacher in. There are several teachers kind of down the road. One was when I just got to United States with my parents and transferred to school here, was sort of some ability to speak English. Some I studied English in school in Ukraine, but not by no means fluent. But I was really good in math, especially compared to now we have lots of programs, lots of accelerators. But back in the day, if you came here from Soviet Union, your math education was by far superior to what our school level was for that. Like I was in seventh grade, I think, or something like that. So, and then down to high school. So I could basically, in seventh and eighth grade, I could solve high school problems easily. So he was really good about challenging me. So instead of sort of letting me be, okay, well, here is my kind of star student. Okay, that's great. He would intentionally create problems for me that were much more challenging. And so he kept me on my toes so that I could continue to learn and be challenged and be interested in math, because easily I could have sort of just gone, who cares, right? And then you can fall behind, and then you would fall behind. I mean, the problem was that would get you to fall behind. Ultimately, you could fall behind, was what I'm saying, right? Because if you get relaxed, at some point you wake up and you go, okay, they've just gotten ahead of me, and I've gotten so used to not being challenged that I forgot what it's like.
Right.
Wow. The other teacher was a biology teacher in that same school, and her name I remember. Marsha is her name, and I went to a Jewish Orthodox school for the first couple of years of being in San Francisco.
Wow.
And coming back from Soviet Union, you didn't learn about a lot of things in biology and physiology and all the things that in Soviet Union might have been taboo, and even kind of growing up in a family that was just a family of immigrants. She found a way to kind of open things up for the class. It wasn't just for me, in a way that she talked about life and people. She even did sex education. I think she would lock the door because I think she wasn't allowed to do that. But it was a person that could be a friend. For kids, there are several kids like myself that were sort of thrown into a new environment and didn't understand the culture. Came from a much more rigid culture where there were a lot of things that were taboo that you couldn't talk about. Certainly couldn't talk about with adults. It just kind of opened me up in many ways. And kind of got me to walk into the next school I went to, which was a public school, Lowell High School, where had I not had a teacher like that, I would have been definitely an outlier to begin with. I would have been a lot more of an outlier, probably been an outcast than an outlier. And then there are a number of teachers in that school who I could just go kind of one by one. There was a teacher who was my English teacher, and I ended up being in a car accident 1 year of high school, so I was not in school almost the entire year. Wow. She kept up with me by coming to my house. Unbelievable, yeah. And because I needed, because English wasn't my first language, so without having a conversation in English, it was not the same thing. So we didn't have, video and RingCentral or otherwise at the time. Yeah. So she would come to my house to make sure that by spending that year at home, that I would continue to improve my English skills. And verbal skills, which was the challenge. It wasn't so much reading and writing; it was the verbal skills, the fear of speaking in a foreign language, which for a teenager, it's very acute.
Big time.
All right,
Wow.
and I'll close on the final teacher, who was the teacher and I had a number of teachers like that in that school who were just such a support system that's just amazing. I mean, I think I just got super lucky in that way. And I would call out on the final teacher, who was my college teacher, who taught one of my senior classes in computer science, and who said to me after a semester, we became friends, and he said, "You have to aim high," And I did special project with him, with his class, which was very, very difficult, which was very just to even get through the project. And he said, you got to trust yourself, more, and you got to aim high. And kind of I left. I think we're still okay.
Yeah, we're still on.
Yeah, and so considering this was my final semester in college, I think, and right before I went interviewing for jobs, that sometimes kind of at that finish line, when somebody says you can jump higher, is that confidence that sort of he kind of taught me to be he gave me that confidence. He increased my confidence level, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. That's awesome. Do these teachers, the more recent ones, do they know what you're doing in life now?
It's a shame. Marsha does. Rebecca does.
Wow.
The math teacher I lost touch with, and actually, now that I'm talking about my computer science professor, I should look him up.
You should. I think your story is so amazing. The obstacles you faced and overcame every step of the way. When people hear your story and see what you've accomplished and what you're doing in an industry dominated by men, I mean, the inspiration you have for all young people, but young women. I think about my daughter who's navigating that right now and wondering, what kind of math student she is. To see that inspiration in front of her, I mean, it's phenomenal. It's really phenomenal. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, and especially in light of what's happening in the world right now, it weighs heavy on my heart to hear that story. So, thank you again.
Thank you. Yeah, what's happening in the world right now is just it's beyond sad. It's happening in this. It's the city that I grew up in is surrounded. People are. I would never have thought that this could happen in modern times. I heard, my grandparents, my parents were almost like, toddlers, a little bit more than that, when the war started, when World War II started. I could never think that anybody would ever have to be evacuated from modern's world that lived through World War II. I mean, that Europe lived through that.
Can you imagine? Right? It's like it's unspeakable.
It really is very sad. I hope there's a resolution without more lives lost.
Agreed. Well, I know that right now there are students fighting to be students in that part of the world. And I was just on a call the other day with a parent. I have Ukrainian students here and intersect with students in different schools that are in the United States, and just hearing about the challenges they're facing. And it's the same sentiment, the discrimination and that you faced, and being from a Jewish family in the former Soviet Union, and even now the discrimination and the hate and the violence that students are facing. And so with that, I want to send this, prayer of peace and hope that soon they find a semblance of normalcy and we can return to our humanity.
Absolutely. Yes. Praying for that. I wake up every morning hoping that there's the fighting is ended, has ended.
Yeah. Kira, thank you for your spirit, your story, and your time. I appreciate you, appreciate the impact you've had. And I know this story will impact so many. As we say at the whole student, class dismissed. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Whole Student Podcast has been brought to you by Duncast. Produced by J.D. Scroggin, the Director of Marketing and Communication at the Dunn School, and co-produced by Brandon Scott of Comfort Food. Thank you for joining us.